Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I'm Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Utopia Season 1, Episode 7. It's called Talking Hearts. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. And this one, everything neatly is coming together. Characters are colliding, plots are merging, everything is ramping up for the finale, which is, Episode 8. It's the next one, so that makes sense. But there is a lot of fun to be had in having plot lines that have been separate. Obviously, not separate in the sense that there's obviously connections to us, the viewers, but separate in that characters have never met all season. There's a lot of fun always in bringing together characters that you like from different plots late on in a story. And having the main team meet up with Stearns is a fun time. It's fun, sort of them kind of realizing that he's not Mr. Rabbit and that he is kind of all for stopping the virus, and that there is some kind of a level of maybe not trust, but certainly being on the same side of the conflict. Obviously, after a very thorough vetting process, which includes crushing his hand with glass and other broken implements inside an oven mitt, and of course checking his genitals for scars and birthmarks that will give away Mr. Rabbit. All of this was a fun watch though, and there was definitely beats in here that played very well. So, something as simple as the moment Stearns, because obviously early in the episode Stearns is confronted by his wife, who reveals that she's been kind of a mole this whole time, and threatens to blackmail him with this fake story of him being a pervert or something to that effect. It was he had dodgy files on his computer. There's a wonderful moment where they're questioning him. The main gang have shown up and they're questioning Stearns, and there's a moment where they're asking him stuff where he just realizes, it's specifically when they ask about, like, why were you at the asylum? If you're not Mr. Rabbit, then why were you there? And he says, for my anxiety, but then he has a moment where he clocks it and he realizes that it was the wife who put him there, and immediately starts pointing them in her direction, which gets Jessica's attention and leads to the torture of her. And they know unequivocally that this is all true when eventually the wife fights back and we get a fight scene between Jessica and her, and everyone kind of watching on. There's a lot of characters standing in the room doing nothing, so when someone yelled out, why won't someone help her? I was kind of thinking the same thing. But this stuff's all fine. When it really gets good though is when it gets to them being proactive. One of the other things I love about horror movies especially is when characters realize they can actually fight back and they can be proactive. So when they're talking about the virus and he reveals his theory that the bunnies are the what's spreading it, which of course perks up their ears a little bit. I noticed Wilson has a nice little reaction to it being bunnies, because rabbits, Mr. Rabbit. It's all there. It's all there to be, conspiracized and theorized and whatever words I'm trying to say. But we get this great montage of like, okay, look, we can try and stop this. It's happening in Chicago next. We can stop this. And there's this montage of what turns out to be them making like makeshift hazmat suits out of shower curtains and cans and various other implements. But it's a fun sequence, but them actually taking charge, and even though it's not like these characters have been super passive, I mean, Jessica especially has been trying to do things all season. I think what makes this one very satisfying is there's no ultimate mystery to it. Yeah, obviously we don't know exactly what they're doing as they're making the things, but when we have the big shot of them getting out of the van at the petting zoo, at night and scaring off the worker, and they're in these like makeshift hazmat suits, you get a sense of what they're doing. You get a sense of what's happening, and it feels like they're accomplishing something to the point where it was almost too good to where I'm starting to think, wait, is it going to turn out that these bunnies aren't the culprit, and are they murdering, as Becky puts it later, did we murder a bunch of rabbits for nothing? Which turns out not to be the case, in the sense that no, they are the what's spreading the virus. They are very much that. They're just not spreading the virus that Stearns thought they were. It's not his. It's something else. He doesn't know what it is. But the vaccine is going to be useless because it's not even that virus, and so on and so on. All of this very enjoyable. They have a cover of Word Up playing as all this is going on, and there's kind of a fun beat with the others because, of course, one of the big things that happens earlier on is that Alice is the one who kills the wife. Alice, grabs the gun off of Ian and shoots her. And I actually thought there was kind of a weird, sweet energy to him trying to cheer her up, and then Grant kind of succeeding and them sort of dancing around to the music. It's really simple. They go out and do all this stuff, and I mean, not only do they try and save the next city, not only do they go and kill all these rabbits and have all these realizations. The big thing, of course, is that once again, Stearns has a realization where he's given all this new information and these new questions from these characters, and he puts it together and he says, wait a minute, Christie's the one who's putting this vaccine through. Christie's the one who made me say all these things. And Jessica immediately just says, Christie is Mr. Rabbit. And it doesn't feel like she's just making that leap based on purely because it makes sense in the context of, like, okay, he's behind all these things, so therefore he must be Mr. Rabbit. It feels like a moment of recognition. It feels like there's something in hearing the name. She's convinced. That's what it feels like to me anyway in this scene. It feels that way. So, no, I really dug all of this, them working together, and it really feels like all of our characters, who I've grown to like at different parts of the season. I thought Stern's best stuff was last episode, and kind of really sold me on him. Obviously, all the other characters I've liked pretty much since day one. Jessica being the odd exception, and Jessica... The weird thing about Jessica is that she has kind of her sweetest moment in this episode where she's with Becky and Becky's looking for some snacks at the lab, and of course there's nothing, but there's like a broken vending machine outside. But there's a moment where on the way to the lab, Jessica gets cut by the bunny, and it's like, wait a minute, that bunny has a virus of some kind, and she's just been scratched by it, and it's drawn blood. Is she in danger here? And she starts asking Becky about why she doesn't want to die. And of course, Becky, just last episode, had a very, very, very near-death experience. And she tries to explain to her that there's stuff to live for, that having a good life is the reward, which is nicely thematically linked to all the other conversations going on in the episode about having a purpose and having the freedom to choose your own purpose, and how that, and this being your life being your own reward, having a good life being the own reward, kind of neatly thematically, lies in bed with that. It feels like the show has, there's a real theme of free will going on in this show, and that's always kind of been there, but this episode I felt really started to shine a light on it. But the one thing I was going to say here about Jessica is that she has this sweet moment where she takes out a Toblerone, bit of product placement, but you know what? Sometimes this would be more annoying if it wasn't a real thing. It'd be more distracting if it was like, it looked like a Toblerone, but it said like triangle chocolate or something. I don't know. And she gives it to Becky. And it's like a sweet moment, and Becky splits it in half and offers her half, and they're sharing it. And then Jessica puts her head on her shoulder, and Becky actually looks, pleased that she's bonding with Jessica. She looks like she's pleased that Jessica is starting to feel more like a human and confiding in her. My one, caveat to this for Jessica's character is that it's been days, maybe a week or so, since she killed Sam by shooting her in the face, an innocent person who Becky was friends with. It is a little bit hard to just kind of forget that, and I do expect that the show is making me more empathetic towards her, and I think it is succeeding in that over time, and this scene maybe does the best job of that, but that is still lingering in my head, and I do have to wonder, when do we get her apologizing or, condoning, or not condoning, atoning is the word I was looking for there. When do we get her atoning for that in some way where she acknowledges it? And it's the sort of thing they could hold off for a long time. They really could. If this show runs 5 seasons, and it may or may not, but this is the sort of thing where you could have her before her death in the series finale 5 years from now saying, oh, by the way, I shouldn't have killed Sam. That was horrible and inhumane. I think what's interesting about it, though, is that it does nicely kind of tie into what Arby's going through. And Arby, of course, wants to be called John now. Arby is sent after Lily, the twin, who at the start of the episode, actually, I did laugh out loud at this moment. I thought it was darkly very funny, where Lily comes out and she's on TV, and Christy is watching this with Arby in the room, and she starts hinting that her father, obviously this is all fake, this is all false, but she starts hinting that her father was, assaulted her, sexually assaulting her, and when she first sort of hints at that, there's a moment where Christy just stands up and says, "What the F?" And I actually laughed out loud at his reaction to that. Like, she's going so off script and making this drama that's out of nothing that she's not been told to do, which is why Arby, of course, is sent after her. And we see her having the time of her life. She's having junk food that she's clearly never had before. Speaking of product placement, there's a moment where Arby, like, you're not really sure if he's going to try and kill her yet, and she says, "Arby, have you ever had Pepsi?" And I sort of chuckled a little bit. I'm like, you know what? Again, this is the sort of thing where it is really kind of in your face product placement, especially afterwards when they're drinking it. But at the same time, would a fake thing or like a general term be as funny? Would her saying, "Have you ever had soda?" Would that be funny? Would her saying, "Have you ever had cola?" That might be funny, but I think it would also take you out of the moment. I think there's something funny about her saying one of the most common, brands there is. Like her saying something that everyone has tried at an early age and, may like, may dislike, but something that's so common, something that you come across constantly in every store you walk in and every place you go, it's there. That's what makes it funny. So as much as it is product placement, I don't think her saying, "Have you ever had Pepsi?" would be funny if it wasn't a brand like that. It didn't have to be Pepsi. It could have been Coca-Cola, and maybe even her saying Coca-Cola, like the full name, would have been funny because no one ever says the full name. We all say Coke, or something like that. But that's what made it funny. So some product placement in this one for sure, but in both cases, it felt like if they hadn't done it with the product, a real product, it would have diminished or taken away the joke. So, especially this one. This one, the entire joke is made because it's something we know. Anyway, I can't believe I've spoken more about that than I have anything else. So Arby's going to take her back. He's not going to kill her. He actually, because this conversation about free will and about how she was supposed to be a martyr but then didn't, because only one of them ended up being a martyr and it wasn't her. So all of a sudden, she didn't have her purpose anymore. And this idea that she felt like this is the first time she'd ever met all these people, and all these people didn't know their purpose, and that was kind of exciting. The idea that it could be anything. Like, your purpose is anything you want it to be. And Arby, of course, is, responding to this. He looks like he's very intently listening and he's interested. And he even acknowledges that he doesn't mind that Home and Christie made him into something, like, made him into what he is. He just wished what they made him wasn't a monster. Like, if they made him into someone else, he wouldn't necessarily be as bothered, is what he's saying here. And that might not be true. He might be incorrect in assuming that. But clearly the fact that they have made him into this assassin, this killer, this cold, merciless killer, is overshadowing anything else that they've ever done with him. And him, at least obviously the big moment at the end, which we'll get to. I'll get back to the other group in a second, but he takes her back, and there's a moment where she calls him John, because that's the name he's picked. He wants to be called John, and he says goodnight, and it's left really kind of darkly ambiguous with her in the scene with Christie where he says, what we're going to do with you now, and she kind of says, what she thinks he needs to hear, which is, I was selfish, I did all these things, I shouldn't have said this and that, and so on. And we see him use her as a kind of a puppet in like a TV interview, and notably not letting her say anything remotely beyond what she's been told to. And they're gearing up. They've got the vaccines. They're making 200,000 a day. They're shipping them out, and he says that in a matter of hours we'll have served our purpose. So clearly this is his end game in some capacity, or at least the start of his end game, whatever. But of course, at the end of the episode, now admittedly, I couldn't tell for sure. It only just kind of slightly registered, but I am pretty sure. And I'll find out if I'm wrong next episode, and I'm sure people in the comments will correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm fairly certain that the individual that Arby, or as he would prefer to be called, John, at the end of the episode has left on the porch for our main group, which now includes, Stearns. He's kind of part of the group now at this point. They're full on planning together. They're talking about how to solve problems. They're working things out. I'm pretty sure this individual that arrives on the porch, who's taped head to toe in duct tape, and you can only see kind of his eyes and the area around his eyes. I'm fairly certain that is Christie. It looks like Cusack's eyes, but I mean, Admittedly, there's room for error here, but it seems like the funniest because I laughed a little bit at the end of this episode, especially when you cut to John watching from across the street with a smirk in his face. Is that not only has Christie failed to put him back in line, he is comically being shipped off to our heroes, and because the episode kind of we're at the point where they're like, hey, we're going to have to find Christie, and we're going to have to kill him to save the world from this vaccine. And Jessica's all gun ho about it, and they're ready to go, and he's just he's handy to them. I mean, this last episode could almost entirely just be in that living room in that house with them like confronting him, and it could be a wonderful like game of words back and forth, and it might actually be fantastic, depending on what they do with it. But I'm not necessarily expecting that. I expect there'll be some other stuff, here or there. So, but there is this thing where John has been raised to be this killer his whole life, and the idea that he's kind of becoming self-aware and trying to change from being that and trying to make his choices to remove himself of that does actually mean that he has a fair chance of being fairly redemptive, despite all of the people that he's killed. And Jessica, you could argue, the death of Sam is kind of in a similar way in that she has been raised, not in exactly the same way that John/Arby has, but certainly her childhood and the way she's been trained by various people has left her not exactly operating in a normal human capacity, the way her mind thinks and the way she works. And again, it's that moment with Becky where you feel the humanity starting to sort of blossom a little bit, that she's not had this chance to do this before. She's not had this chance to bond with someone, and that is maybe her on her path to being redeemable for her actions that we've seen that haven't been the most pleasant. So these themes, this idea of like these various kids being forced to be something from birth, because that's the thing is when Christie's talking to Lily and he says, why did I make home, and they're listing all the reasons, like, to create an equal world where there's no racism, sexism, everyone's got a purpose. Bizarrely, in putting everyone into a predetermined path that you have decided, you're actually giving them even less freedom than just about anyone else has. You're brainwashing children into believing they have one singular goal in life, whatever you have destined for them. It's the ultimate God complex in a lot of ways. Well, maybe not ultimate. Ultimate would actually be creating life, I suppose. But you know what I mean? Like, it kind of gets you into the character mindset of him and what he believes he is. And, I expect he's going to slyly try to talk his way out of everything. I should mention there is also a slight detour where Jessica and Wilson go to the Homeland Security lady, because she's meant to be the guardian angel, the helper, and she kind of proves that she is who that, she is who they think she is based on the comic by having the blanket. But she's not ready to believe that Christie's Mr. Rabbit. She believes Mr. Rabbit is real, but she's met Christie. She says he's a good person, and this vaccine is going to save people. So there could be some swerves next episode that I don't see coming. But so for the most part, it's a fairly straightforward episode, but it works very well. If you've been into the season, you've been into the story that we've been on. I think this is a solid episode that's kind of in the ballpark of last episode in terms of quality. I think 1, 2, and 3 are great episodes that are definitely the high point of the season. 4 and 5 slowed down a little bit, and I wasn't as into those. I think 6 and 7 have both been pretty solid and done some different things from what the show's done previously that are enjoyable. And I enjoyed all the characters coming together. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it all kind of wraps up and whatever cliffhanger we're going to get, and whatever they're going to do in this finale. So that's good. Let's try to think if there's anything else I want to point out or give thoughts on. A couple of camera tidbits, one positive, one negative. Positive, I liked the oneer, the 360 oneer in the room when they were listening to the music. I thought that gave that a nice energy that felt distinct from the rest of it and felt more kid-like. It felt like there was this, gleefulness about it. Alternatively, I do think a lot of the cuts during the Jessica and Stern's wife fight was a little bit it was a bit overly cut, and a lot of like extreme close-ups which made it feel like I wasn't really following the flow of the combat as much as I was just kind of seeing a lot of quick things, making it seem sort of confusing, like I wasn't really being able to pinpoint what they were doing. And sometimes they'll say that's the goal, but I don't know. It never. Sometimes that can work in certain contexts. I don't know if, given they're in a brightly lit kitchen, nothing about it felt like it was supposed to feel obscured, and yet it kind of did, oddly. But credit where credit is due. I think I'm enjoying Arby's progression. I think Stern's, because it felt like they were dragging it out a little bit in 4 and 5 with his character's plot. Once we got to the last episode, I think his character really started to, or maybe not his character, but his character's plot really started to blossom a little bit, and I got a lot more out of that. And yeah, so I think we're getting the finale in a relatively good place. It's been an enjoyable season, and I'm looking forward to see how things wrap up. So let me know what you thought of this penultimate episode in the comments below. Please do hit the like button. Liking is super important on YouTube. It is the easy and the free way to show your support and show that you want to keep the content coming. Of course, commenting, subscribing, dinging the bell, all those things do help too. If you want to go a little bit further, you can go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your troubles. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?